Hello, hello. This is Earth Sky Woman, Tammy Brunk, beaming to you live from the Moniteau County, Missouri River Watershed in Missouri, and where I find myself once again. And I've been doing, in this last very interesting week, I have been really deepening into a practice of just rooting in and grounding and ceremony. And so I wanted to be with you here from my kind of like zone one, um, the space where I've been building the energy, so I can share that with you because it feels like to me what I've been learning right now, and I'm just sharing this, and then I will open into what this Taurus full moon is about because it's very much related. Um, to me, it feels like with everything that we have been experiencing here in the US and across the globe, that are rooting down into the most essential practice is so important. And part of that is turning within, part of that is really connecting into our own soul wisdom, and also part of it is connecting very literally to the earth and to the ancestors of the lands where we live and our own ancestry and as well as of course the wisdom of the stars, the wisdom of the celestial or the heavenly realms. So as you know, I refer to myself as Earth Sky Woman, and the reason for that is because that it has always felt to me, particularly though in the last 8 years, it's felt to me so essential that we as humans are learning um, to bridge, to integrate the two worlds, and that's really what we're up to right now. Is we've been in a zone of kind of separation, spirit from matter, male from female, masculine from feminine, yin from yang. There's been this kind of interesting out of balance distortion there. And so what we're doing is we're remembering how to be in balance with those energetics and how to it's kind of like the concept of sacred union. And this is important for the full moon because the full moon is an energy of sacred union. It has to do with when the sun and the moon are exactly opposite one another. So this very primal, yang, fiery solar energy with the lunar energy, the sun and the moon together are finding this sacred balance and this dance together. So that's what we're doing right now as a human species is finding the balance after a time of a lot of imbalance, right? So so for me, what has felt really essential is to the the louder it gets out there, it is I do feel that for me there is a responsibility to stay connected enough that I can follow the thread of what's unfolding through the political sphere and all of that. I do feel increasingly that many of us are actually being called to be much more active in the outer world and in the probably local politics and local decision making and local community building. I think that is incredibly important, and we're going to see that more and more in the years to come. And at the same time, it feels to me like there's such a vital need to do that from a place of rooting into our own inner being, our own higher wisdom, and into the lands where we live, and to really be dropping in to listen and to be present with what it is that's wanting to be um, come alive through us. It's wanting to be seen and felt. And that this is the moment we're in. It's a very exciting moment, actually, as a species, that we are remembering something that's so sacred and so ancient and true. And again, that is the consciousness that is all around us, flowering all at all times. It's the divine nature of this entire creation that we forgot about. So we're in this moment, whatever is happening in the political realms. And again, this is not to diminish that because I'm I've had like many of you my own deep soul searching in this last week and a half of what does this mean? What is the energetic behind it, and how is it that I can use that energy to to activate me, to bring me more into an active participation and engagement with the world around me, with the human world and the more than human world, and how can I have that support me in a deeper commitment to what my values are and who I am and who I came here to be, and to the prayer that I represent for my ancestry. So just with that offered, um, I'm here with you today because I'm really grateful to have the space in this point in my life to devote time to connecting to the earth and to the land and to the medicine of my life up to this stage. I'm about to turn 52, which in the Mexican tradition and also Mayan is understood to be a time when we move into eldership. And so I as well have been continuing and completing a many, many year cycle with Chiron. And so, again, that's part of why I've landed here deeply on the land, and I'm so grateful for that. And I've landed here in a place where I can bring, after a lot of being a nomad with everything scattered here and there, I have everything, all the medicines from many travels and many years of connection with sacred lands and sacred peoples, um, to bring that all together in one place. So for me, that's part of what's helping me root into what's true. And mm, so I just wanted to share a little bit of that with you so I can, offer a little bit of what my focus has been, and honoring that we all have our own ways of engaging with this moment that we find ourselves in, that we may interpret in very different ways. But I think we all feel that there is actually, I think many of us recognize that this is just the beginning, that the elections and all of this is clearly it's important, but there are much bigger movements that we're in the midst of. And so my sense is actually that, yes, pay attention to what's going on with the elections and what that brings up for us, how that can, always asking, how can these outer events, how can I be in relationship with them in such a way that it actually strengthens my core? How can I be in a relationship with these outer events in such a way that it strengthens my sense of who I came here to be and what my offering is to the world at this time? How can I use whatever is happening out there to actually strengthen and empower me and help me become more integrated and whole? And I think we're really being asked to turn things on their head and move out of what we might be comfortable sometimes with more of a bit of a inertia, let's be honest. And so I certainly struggle with that, but we're definitely being called awake at this moment. It's a big awakening moment. And the way I feel it and sense it, and again, I feel many of us are in the same place, is that it's kind of like a falling asleep and waking up, falling asleep and waking up, falling asleep and waking up. And more, it's how long can I be awake? For how long of a period can I be awake? And how do I wake up sooner, 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 no matter what's going on out there? And how can I be awake more of the time? So, hmm. So the full moon in Taurus, this is a massive full moon of great import. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that it's the fourth in a series of four super full moons, meaning that the full moon is happening very close to the time of perigee, or the period where the moon is at its closest to the earth. So this is why it's so big and brilliant and beautiful if you saw it last night. And of course, tonight it's going to be even closer. It's going to be even more exact. And when I say exact, meaning that the point when the sun and the moon are exactly opposite one another, that's happening this afternoon. And so, by the time that we're actually seeing the sunset and the moonrise, it's going to be big and beautiful. So don't miss that. Look on your phone if you need to, which most of us do, to see when moonrise is, and if you can find a good horizon. This is a really good time to have a fire to gather people, and and if maybe just for yourself to be in a connection with the moon. I was singing to her last night out in the woods, and it just felt really good. Um, in any case, okay, so here we have this full moon in Taurus, and so it's an important in the level that it's a super full moon. It's also really very vital because it's conjunct Uranus. And Uranus has been in the sign of Taurus now for quite some time. And it's about to move next year into the sign of Gemini. And with Uranus and Taurus, this has been a very, very significant blessing from my perspective in and a beautiful invitation in terms of, when you look at what sign Uranus is in, that's actually telling us where it is that we need to wake up. Each of the planets can be really, we can look at the essence of the planet as well, and we can ask, okay, what is the primary essence? And to me, Uranus really is about wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Where have I been unconscious, and where is it time for me to wake up? So with Uranus in the sign of Taurus for the last number of years, humanity has been in a process of waking up to the divinity that lives in the body and the material realms. That has been the invitation. Now, I'm not saying that when we look around our world that it looks very much like that's what's happening. However, I would actually say that is exactly what's happening, and that this is what's absolutely vital. This is what is the kind of the crux of it, the crucible of are we as a species going to make it out of this passage and survive as a species and with and to thrive, I would even suggest, as a species. And it, to me, it has everything to do with this, is waking up to the divine aspect of this material realm. We could talk about this as the divine feminine. And the reason we can talk about this as the divine feminine is because it can be understood that the feminine journey is the journey of bringing spirit, bringing divine into the physical material realm. That is the feminine journey. That is the feminine consciousness. And that lives within men and women and non-binary people. This is not something that just belongs to one gender. So it's one half of the creation when we live in this material realm. So Taurus, so with the Taurus full moon, then let's talk about Taurus a little bit more. So the sign of Taurus is, first of all, of course, an earth sign. So it has to do with moving more into the realm of the material, Mother Earth. It has to do with connecting more with her wisdom, with her energy. When we connect with Taurus, it is also an invitation to slow down, to really drop in to our physical bodies and to be really present in the moment. Many somatic practices that people are doing now have some form of a grounding exercise that involves really presencing and naming some of the physical objects around us. And this is, as a species, this is important for us at this time, because in modernity, we live so much in our minds and in our not even imagination. We live so much in the in the web, in a sense, that we often forget to. I mean, I certainly do. I forget that. Oh wow, this is glass, right? This is a jar. This is something I'm drinking water out of. This is water, and to really presence the material realm around us. Now, this is a practice that more and more I've been dropping into, and many of us in part of our initiatory processes into earth-based spirituality. This is a huge part of it, is to actually, when we look at something physical, to consider the story of that physical object and to consider it in a much deeper way as a living being and as a continuum of experiences that have created this being. So if I look at this glass bottle, for example, or this jar, then I can think about the sand that was used to make this glass. Where did that sand come from? What ocean, what beach, what sacred land did that come from? I can think about the process. I can think about the humans who were involved in that process, and I can offer blessings to everyone who is involved in that process. I can consider the water in my jar, of course, and I can connect to that water very viscerally and feel and connect to the energy of water, and then feel the resonating water in my body, the fluids in my body. So there can also be this congruency of feeling the resonance between this aspect of my body and this physical body right here with me. So that's just a very simple practice that we can use that really does tune us into Virgo. I would say it also resonates with Virgo to really connect to the material and really honor and value the sacredness of it. But Taurus is really helps us learn how to savor and enjoy the pleasure of being in a physical body with the sensory experiences that come with that, and also to be able to enjoy connecting with the physical material reality around us and really receiving the gift of being in a body, being able to breathe fresh, clean air, being able to go outside and see that sun and feel the warmth of the sun on our face. Those are sensory experiences that are miraculous, magical, incredible, and we get to be here for that. So I think sometimes of Taurus in its original essence as being like embodied prayer. And I've often felt that if we wanted to heal and mend the aspect of our current culture that is addicted to overconsumption, um, the part of each of us and of our current culture that is devouring the world around us in a way that is far too often has been devoid of a respect, um, and really treating the physical objects that we are working with. We have lost our ability to really have respect for what it goes into this physical modern societal reality. We forgot about that, many of us, not all of us, and we're remembering. So but there is this But my sense has been that Taurus can be kind of the antidote to that, because when we are really dropping into the medicine of Taurus, and again, this full moon is that invitation, and it's going to continue to be in Taurus through the evening. Um, and, we can work with this medicine beyond, of course, it's seeding something we can continue to connect with. But in every month, the moon moves into Taurus, so there's a precise moment to do that. But Taurus offers the medicine of slowing down sufficiently to fully savor whatever it is that we're doing. And so that we break that habit of continually having the mind race ahead and be somewhere else. When I'm drinking my coffee, and this is a practice I really do love, when I drink my coffee, I'm really tasting it. I'm really considering as well, where do the beans come from? What is the origins of coffee? What country does it originally come from? More and more you can, and a lot of these plants and medicines, they have traveled through lots of different lands, through lots of different cultures, have informed them. I think about eucalyptus. That is a plant that I love. I just love it. And where it originally came from, and uh, how how important of a medicine it is now across many landscapes that have the conditions that are right for it to grow. So, but in any case, so when we eat a piece of chocolate, or when we're holding our lover's hand or our child's hand, and we drop into our bodies sufficiently that we're really present in that moment, and our mind for a moment relaxes, it feels peaceful, so that we can fully receive the gift of being in this physical body. To me, that is Taurus. That is what Taurus actually is. That's what it's about. And that's the medicine that it has to offer that we might forget. We know that Taurus can, in a distorted way, when Taurus loses its soul or loses connection to its true root, then it can become very materialistic. It just wants more and more. But the reason for that, again, is because it's forgotten that it's actually not about the quantity of how much you have, but it's about the quality. So, for example, the difference between um, a handcrafted um, table and something that is slapped together in a factory in a developing country. Um, and so, the difference between those two things and what the individual or individuals are experiencing when they're making that object and what their life conditions are, that is worlds apart. So how is it that, and I think we are very much invited at this full moon and beyond to dream into, and this is, I think, our biggest charge right now, is that it's for us to dream into what kind of world we actually want to live in. And I think this is a very rigorous practice right now, as so much does continue to fall apart around us and crumble as we're going through this deathing birthing portal, that we are invited to continue to come back to say, what kind of a world do I want to contribute to creating, and to really open our hearts to what's possible with that, and not limit ourselves. And that's also Uranus. Uranus on the full moon is saying, what's possible? What's possible? What can you create? Where's the beauty? How can we have more of that? Stop shutting yourself down and saying, oh, that's not possible, before you even dream as big and beautiful as you can. My sense is that it's more important than ever now for us to have our visions and our dreams of the future that's possible. And it really begins to emerge from the ground underneath our own feet, and from our own lived experience, and from this moment in time where we are now. That's where it emerges. And it begins with very simple practices of acknowledging the physicality of this material world and the gift of that. So, um, so again, my sense is that if we can learn to, uh, the world I want to live in is a world where we are our craftsmen, our artisans, our music makers, the capacities we have to do things with our hands, our herbalists, those qualities that we have as humans that are just woven into us so deeply, that we have the space and we have the time and we have the capacity in this culture, for those who feel drawn to it, to remember to do these things again, and to step out of the reality that says that everything that we do is is just feeding a certain reality that feels at times very devoid of presence, and again of sacralizing the material realm. So my sense again is that the Taurus full moon is an invitation for us to deeply bless this material reality that we live in through our actions, through words of praise and love, through the ways that we treat our other fellow material embodied beings. And that's a big invitation. And again, also to slow down enough to really fully be in the body and listen to its messages. What is the body? What does our body have to say to us? Um, and I do feel like when Taurus is really in its zone, when we slow down in this way, there's kind of a still point where we are not distracted um, by anything outside of the immediate experience. We're fully, deeply immersed in it. And there's so much beauty there. There's so much beauty. So at this full moon and far beyond, even of course beyond the full moon, the Taurus energies are always available to us. So this is simply a spark, a remembrance, a planting a seed. But particularly also, of course, if you listen to this today, then we get to plant that seed together. We get to, in our meditations and our ceremonies and our fire circles and our just being present with the moon, we have a special opportunity to connect to that. And for those listening later, absolutely, it's always a blessing. And Uranus continues to be in Taurus until next, around the middle of next year. So this is an invitation to connect with that energy of Uranus and Taurus and wake up to the beauty and the divinity of our bodies, of our physical material realm, and to slow down enough to really perceive and engage with the the trees, the plants around us, even the physical objects in our homes as sacred beings, as holy, as having a holy element. And let me just say that when you start to do this, I've been in a beautiful I've been in a beautiful class with a woman, Zoe Christine Solaris, and it's really breaking it down into the bones, the basic elements of ceremony, which is beautiful because I've actually been deeply trained in ceremony for years, from the time I began my training as a shamanic astrologer, which has been over, I think it's been over 20, um, it's been almost 20 years now, from when I began that work. And even way before that, when I started working with Indigenous communities, and I was so privileged to participate in ceremony that was conducted through Indigenous community members and friends. That earth-based ceremony was something I've been introduced to very early on and absolutely vital in my own life experience, and opened so much awareness in me that has been a gift beyond measure. But then my own training through ceremony has been really vital. But still, as a person who is steeped in this current reality where ceremony is often devoid, it's absent. Um, I decided to take this class because I wanted to really deepen into the bones. That's a lot of what I like to do, is deepen into the bones, the missed steps, the places where maybe I hadn't really deepened into the elements, the structure, the scaffolding, or the architecture of ceremony. And this has been an amazing community, and Zoe's work has been just impeccable in helping me to remember that kind of devotion. And so two of the elements, I'm just sharing this with you today because it feels very relevant for the Taurus full moon. Two of the elements that I have been recognizing are the most challenging for me. One is permissions. And that's where we took a week where we were just focusing on asking permission for almost everything that we did. So really, and if I light a candle, it's asking, it's really asking the match, before I pick it up, is it appropriate to pick you up? I mean, this is very, very, simplistic, right? And then feeling in my body, but even more so when I wanted to do ceremony on the land, when I wanted to just open the directions, or if I wanted to make an offering of a drink to the land, or other ways, or flowers, there are different ways we make offerings, that I would even ask permission, or especially ask permission of the land, and say, or the tree, if I'm going to make an offering near the tree, do I have your permission to make this offering? And what was so striking about that practice was, I'll tell you, the most powerful experience I had with it was where I was asked to do a land blessing, and I was so honored to do this. Where there were my friend um, is managing a nature conservancy site, 180-acre site across the Missouri River, directly across from us. And he asked me, he's planting 20,000 trees with a group of conservationists and local community members. And he asked me to do a land blessing. And I was so honored and a little bit intimidated to do, I'm always intimidated to do ceremony in community here in Missouri. Um, but I said I would, so I did. And when I went to the land early, the morning of the event, I'd already spent some time on it and really connected and felt so much love. But when I went to that spot and I asked permission of the land to do the ceremony early that morning, um, there was something that happened inside of my body and my system, because in my prayers and in my asking, I I realized how often have I done this? So seldom have I actually asked to do this. I just kind of jump right in, right? So there was something of a wow, like a waking up in my body, like, wow, I didn't, it's all about consent, right? We're talking about consent and women, and this is a waking up process we're going through. The land is the same, I'm asking, is it okay for us to be here? And I was literally connecting with the ancestors, original ancestors of the land, the more recent ancestors, and the future ancestors. And each time I asked the question, there was a flicker that called each of those three times. And I was so deeply moved, and I felt it in my body. More and more, it's just like listening. Does my body feel, does it like relax? Like the land is saying yes, the land's saying yes, you have permission. And do you know, I feel like in some way that was the first time in my life, with so much time that I've spent in sacred lands, where I've offered love, I've traveled there. I know I've brought my love there. I know I'm gritting in my own way. It's a big part of what I'm here to do. That was the first time that I consciously asked for permission and felt in my body what it feels like to be welcomed. And it was a profoundly um, moving experience. It opened so much up in my heart that I didn't even know I was missing, because part of my life path has been that I've been introduced deeply to Indigenous medicines and perspectives, but a lot of my work with Indigenous communities was mostly centered around land defense or supporting in the community with organizations, or supporting organizations who are doing amazing work on the land. But I'm not one of these people who, I have studied the spirituality from Indigenous peoples to some degree, but over the last number of years, I'm not a pipe carrier. I'm not any of those things, because I have, I have actually, and it may be that that is more what like where life is calling me, if that's what I'm invited to. But it has been my path to always ask, how can I remember what my soul already knows? How can the land instruct? How can I ask the land to instruct me? And it's a kind of a weird, awkward thing, because we're intended to do this in community. And and I have with shamanic astrology and active dreaming, those are two forums and formats where I've learned to do ceremony in beautiful ways with dreaming and with the night sky. But more and more and more, I'm feeling so called to deepen into the listening. So I'd mentioned before, the permissions is one of the biggest things that I found is very challenging. Um, that was a beautiful moment on the land, and it opened everything up when I was asked to do the land blessing, and then I got the permissions and I felt it in my body. I'll go back to that for a moment before I move forward. So what happened after that was that, because I was more attuned before, because I was more connected in more of an earthy way. Um, Meaning usually I'm connected up here, like I'm up here somewhere. That's just part of how I'm wired. But this time I felt my body be welcomed in a particular way that was slowed down. Also, usually because I'm traveling, I feel like my body is moving through space, and it's pulled and drawn by the ancestors of the land, or the spirits of the land, or my own spirit, or however it's working. So I know I'm offering blessing and prayer and love, but this is next level. It's kind of like the earth has been like, okay, that's fine. Like, she doesn't remember completely. She's still doing some good work, but now it's like next level. Like, this is important. You need to actually consider permissions. So I got the permission, and then I felt it in my body. And then the next thing was that I was setting up kind of a circle with cushions for people to sit. I was going to gather water from the from the river, so that we could bless it together. I had a drum. I was actually going to use my drum, which is a very essential, beautiful drum that was gifted to me. Um, and mind you, these are beautiful souls who are not accustomed to ceremony. They're all these deeply dedicated environmentalists, conservationists in the community. So I wanted to do it in a good way that they could connect to. But so I was going to lay out my blanket. It's part of how I do ceremony. But instead, what the land said to me was, no, make a fire, because there are all these dead branches everywhere. So the land was saying, make a fire. So I hesitated for a moment. It's like, is this the right thing? And then there's that tension, like, what will the humans think versus what is the land telling me? And this is part of where we're at right now, is that tension. We need to be deeply respectful to our fellow humans. And a lot of us who are more spiritual or more connected to the land, actually, sometimes we go so far in that direction that we're completely out of touch with our human community. And it's absolutely vital to do both. But in this moment, there's also that, okay, the land's saying, make a fire. Okay, make a fire. And it did feel right. So I did. I gathered the sticks and I made a fire. And it felt so beautiful to make the fire. It wasn't a perfect fire. It was pretty smoky at certain points. Um, but it felt necessary. And it actually felt like it drew us together at a level that was so beautiful and so organic. And like my friend Susa likes to say, when we're really in our path and we're really waking up to these mysteries again, a lot of times it feels awkward. So there was an awkwardness in that opened my heart. And I think it was helpful to the rest of the group as well, because we're all kind of fumbling around and awkward when it comes to how to remember to do ceremony and how to remember the sacredness of the land and slow down enough to weave or braid in a ceremonial process in a way that our modern minds don't really react to with aversion. Um, so in any case, this all feels related to Taurus on the level that this has to do with, ceremony. A lot of times earth-based ceremony is so important for us right now because that's exactly what it does. It helps us sacralize the material. It helps us drop out of our minds and into our bodies and in connection with the living world around us. So the Taurus full moon is an invitation to that. It's an invitation to, and I mentioned listening. So that's the other, we spent a week, this is a week of listening. We're listening to the land. We're listening to spirit. We're listening to what Zoe refers to as our anointed ancestors, the ancestors who are one with the divine, which I found very, very helpful. There's a lot of ways of looking at the whole healed ancestors, well ancestors. For me, the anointed ancestors feels most resonant in my body. And what that has to do with is that, my sense is it's very true that in this moment in time, at this critical turning of an age, that and as we complete this Pluto and Capricorn cycle, that our rooting down into the deep ground of our own ancestral lineages, both, well, I'll say blood lineages is something I think many of us are focusing on right now, that is absolutely essential to help us to make it through this time. And so the listening has to do with this process of, especially in this last week and a half, I guess it's, a week and a few days since the elections here in the US. Again, there's so many waves of intensity in every direction and every kind of sensation and feeling that I think many of us are meeting right now. We're like, oh, wow, this big movement's happening. What is it about? How do I engage with it? And so during that time, this listening process does feel incredibly important, because it can be so easy to miss the subtle clues and messages from our intuition and from the spirits of the land and from our guides. It takes a lot to learn that language. So what I've been finding through the ceremonial process, what I've been meeting a lot, is actually something that I was introduced to when I was in Ireland as well. And it's a really interesting meditation. And that is it is meeting my inner rebelliousness. And when I say rebelliousness, it's the part of me that's in massive resistance to devotion. It's in massive resistance to the kind of spiritual work and muscle building it takes to bring radical presence into the moment and into this physical material realm. And so listening, permission was one of those things, because it's like, part of me is like, oh my God, like I feel so irritated that I need to ask when I enter the room if the room itself is like, am I welcome here? Right. I mean, that I actually like doing that. But when I really started to break it down, it was forcing me to connect with the consciousness of everything around me, the tree, the plants, all of that. And it felt like, God, I don't have time for that. This is exhausting to have to really consider everything around me with that much presence. And then listening, really when I sit and every morning and I meditate, I pray, I drum, it's like, do I really even know how to listen? Like, what does this even mean? I thought I was a decent listener, but I actually think that that is the biggest challenge for me, is really deeply listening. And I suspect many of us are that way. Um, we can pray, or we can make our um, affirmations, or however we do these things, but are we actually really adept at listening to the response and the other side of the conversation? So I offer that because it does feel to me that Taurus can help us to be more attuned to that deeper listening, because when we're really rooted in the wisdom of Taurus, we are fully in our bodies. And our bodies, when our spirit is in our body, we are going to be, and in that kind of still point of presence, then it becomes very natural for us to be an instrument of deep listening to the spirit that's moving through all the rest of the physical material reality. So those are some of my thoughts about Taurus and how we can use it as a gift and blessing and work with it as a gift and blessing at this time. Other elements of Taurus have to do with self-valuing. How do we value ourselves? And this to me feels like a very important teaching in this moment as we consider the current leadership in the US. Say what we will about what this presents to us. And I would, I think it's very essential to add what this means for those in our communities who are most vulnerable, including immigrants, including our queer friends, including indigenous communities who are guarding and stewarding sacred lands that have a lot of oil deposits on them. These are things we need to consider, and including women in poor communities um, who are going to have less, potentially less resource to care for themselves in certain ways. Now, I say all of this. This is the one end of the spectrum. And then I also, like many of us, are also very curious about what's going to happen with RFK Jr. We're very curious about the way that this presidency clearly is going to be a disruptor. That's what we know for sure. And I wasn't going to talk too much about this, but I am going to talk about it. My sense is part of what's happening, because I have a number of people in my larger field of spiritual practice who are 100%, supporting Trump. And I don't mean to diminish that, actually, because my sense is that it's very important actually to listen to every viewpoint. That is one of my values. I think it's important to sit and listen and actually be very curious. I actually think that's hugely important for us right now. So all those things I just listed are my deep concerns. I certainly would say if Kamala was elected, we would have another set of concerns. And the biggest one, I think, being apathy and status quo, which is absolutely not working, and continued genocide with the go-ahead from that administration. But one of the uh, so when we look at the current, gosh, okay. So what I've been noticing is that for certain spiritual circles who were very much seated during COVID with what has been with the QAnon movement, I'll just say it, which has been massively maligned, and I understand why. And at the same time, I do feel that there are elements of truth within that emerge from that movement that should be considered. I think it's far too easy for us. Again, this is the binary, this is the split that's been happening, where the way our media pits us against each other, and now we have completely different social media platforms. We have completely different worlds that are bifurcating in terms of media. That's what's been happening. That I think that part of what's been happening for certain spiritual teachers and certain seers and oracles is that this time around, last time, nobody thought Trump was going to win. This time around, I think many of us knew that could happen. but many spiritual teachers and guides and they who were predicting or who are very much 100% in favor of Trump for various reasons. When you're tuning into the realm of spirit, I think there are a couple of things that we can feel. One is that there is a need for change, and that was our option for change. Two is that the system itself needs to radically shift and change, and there will be massive radical change. And three is that there is a need in our current reality to, I'm going to say it, this is a very touchy thing to say. It's interesting. One of my mentors, not that I've worked with her personally, but her books have been, her work has been massively influential to me, is Barbara Hand Clow. And she's a big influence in my work. And one of the things that I was reading in one of her older books, The Pleiadian Agenda, is that, okay, and this is a potential trigger warning for all the beautiful goddesses in my reality, of the women in my reality, are very aware of the imprint of misogyny that is very alive and well. So I acknowledge that. Barbara Hand Clow, one of the things she would say is that one of the deep root causes of the violence of patriarchy is the emasculation of the emasculinization. I don't even know how to say it, of the masculine. And this opens a whole can of worms, right? This is what the polarity movement has been trying to address on some levels. And then that movement also has this very dark, shadowy side of trying to pull us into the past in ways that are deeply diminishing to the full spectrum feminine and deeply diminishing to the full spectrum masculine. That's what I'm going to say. But what was wanting to happen there, from my perspective, is a deep honoring of men and of the masculine principle, because there is absolutely no way that we're going to heal the wounds of where we've come from without, as a collective. And I think, as much from the more progressive end or as the more conservative end of perspectives and lived experiences, that we are needing to find a place of profound love and reverence and care for the higher principles of the masculine, and to uplift and to see the best in the men around us so that they can stand in that, because the masculine wants to be used, meaning the masculine wants to be put to work. The masculine inside of everybody wants to be put to work, wants to take action, wants to have agency, wants to make things happen. And I think it's quite natural that with the movements since the 60s and before of trying to create a balance of honoring the feminine, who had been so deeply diminished and devalued, that we have moved into a zone. And this is my rebelliousness. I'm going back to my rebelliousness, which was brought up in Ireland around the concept of Lilith and who is Lilith. And I felt that there was a lot of demonizing of Lilith, that there was like, she's just bad. She is literally a demon. Don't work with her energy. That's bad medicine. And so I found that to be problematic. And at the same time, I was curious. I'm like, where is this coming from? And I started to connect into the way that there can be a distorted energy of Lilith. And this is shadow work, right? The part of us that is so averse to the companionship between feminine and masculine on the outside, that it will do anything it can to disrupt those bonds, those patterns of bonding between those two energies. And when you look at the foundation of life in this planet, that is problematic. Now, of course, we are simplifying everything, because what the conservative community that's feeling very reactive about certain cultural emergent themes, what they may not recognize is that it really is the queer community, and the queer community that really often is helping us to have a deeper understanding of what the masculine energetics are really about and what the feminine energetics are really about, because they have to, in their lives, many queer individuals, they don't have the luxury of just falling back into old roles, because in their life path, there is this profound gift and medicine that they're here cultivating at often great personal cost and requiring tremendous personal courage to really move with and balance and bring alive those polarities in very powerful ways. And in indigenous societies, that's the two spirit, always understanding that a person who has deep shamanic skills has this more often this really strong connection to both the feminine and the masculine poles. They're both very alive within them. And this connects as well to the medicine of the sun in Scorpio, because what we feel in this time of year with the season of Scorpio is we are invited into our deep aliveness. We are dropped into the recognition that as a human on the planet at this time, we are also needing to face the places where we are shut down. We've become numb. We have cut off our aliveness in order to belong, in order to not feel the pain that can come from a full sense of connectedness to the body and the emotional body and the body of the earth. And so Scorpio can sometimes, when we really drop into it, can flood us with that experience of what feels very dark or what feels very scary or what feels very unknowable. And so with the Scorpio sun, opposite the Taurus moon, we also are being required to, how do I want to say required? I say required. I'll just share that some of the work that I've been doing that feels very Lilithian is working with Kasia Urbaniak, working with her work. And she wrote the book Unbound. I've talked about her before. Her history, her background is as a dominatrix and also as a master of certain Taoist Tibetan martial arts. And she brings that work together to help women to unlock and unfreeze from the places where they get really caught in good girl conditioning, such that they don't have any of their own agency. They don't have their empowerment so that they can be a force in the world that affects change. They can't fully inhabit their lives. They can't fully advocate for themselves in positions where they're being preyed upon, for example. That is the depth of her work. So she had a live event a few days ago, and it was a very powerful event. And this is very Scorpionic territory. And what I felt with her very powerfully was this. She's very much a Dakini. She's very much this Tantrika, just like powerful, like kind of mischievous, very powerful feminine energy. And she was working with the energy in the room. And Scorpio in its primal essence doesn't actually care if that energy is bad or good. Energy is energy. So whether it's a feeling of going through a natural disaster, for example, and the body wakes up, it's like, oh my God, I've got to take care of myself. Or whether it's a child that's being born. In both circumstances, the body wakes up and the body is like, whoa, something big's happening. I feel alive. Or if someone's elected that you fear is going to is causing a lot of disruption in the world, then that also can wake your energy up. So that's how she was working with it. And she was inviting us to say, this is a wake up moment. Use that energy. Don't miss this opportunity. And one of the things she even said as she took us through this process of embodiment, of dance, of asking certain questions, really, really dropping into the energy and feeling everything we felt, was that she was suggesting that the goddess inside of us in a circumstance like this is actually excited about it. And she's saying she feels eros. I forget the words. It's something like when the goddess meets an event like what we're experiencing now in our election, where it's like, whoa, something big's happening. Here's this energy. The goddess is just like, oh, now I get to dance with that. Now I get to move with that. Now there's all this available energy and aliveness that's coming through that I get to play with to as a powerful creator. And so what if we can look at it in that way? And again, like I began, how can this experience, how can I use everything in my outer experience to come more alive? How can I use everything in my outer reality to become more empowered, to become all of who I am? So with that, I feel like I've already, this is quite a, but all of these things have been just flooding my mind. I've wanted to share this with you for so long and haven't had the words yet. But I think the final thing I'll say is when I look at, because I know I've been really rambling, one of the recognitions that I've been feeling. Well, and let me say first, because I don't think I've said this, and this feels important. I want to actually offer the possibility that this presidency is a good thing. And I'm saying that on the level that I guess I've been saying that, haven't I? Oh my gosh, when I say it, I get still inside of my heart and I think, oh, saying it's a good thing is actually, that's not the words I want to use. I think I've been saying it the whole time. I'm just going to stop there. I'm deeply concerned, as many of you all are as well. And I'm also, everything that I'm trying to speak into is that I think it's also a profound opportunity. It's a profound opportunity. Okay, wow. And so what I'm feeling in my system as I'm saying all this is I'm feeling all the relatives and connections and community members who are indigenous, who are close to the land. In any case, my sense is that we can look right now, because I also want to honor part of my value, part of my way of being is that I do see the good in everything. And I guess what I tend to see is the good where I see the people who are closest to me often don't see the good. It's part of what I do. It's part of what I do. It's part of how I operate. So when I look at Donald Trump and I look at JD Vance and I look at individuals in that circle, I look at Elon Musk, and I mean, I actually do think some of this, what could happen from this could be very beneficial. I will say that. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to look at it with a lot of curiosity and a really clear mind, and with connecting to my heart and just asking what's for me to do in my own community, what's for me to do right here. When it comes to the global field, I'm just curious. I'm like, oh, okay, what could happen here? What could happen here? I want to have an open heart for anything wonderful and beautiful and powerful could happen in this realm. And I'm also very clear that there are larger powers at work that are beyond all that, right? And finally, I'll say, I do think it's also an invitation for us to become more engaged in our community and to create more bridges with people who think differently than we do. I think we absolutely, especially as progressives and liberals, the way that we come off, and this is why I was so averse to Kamala, is that I'm so conscious of the way that the communicating through the DNC machine is so dismissive of the reality of working people. It makes my stomach turn, and it's genocidal. And I'm not saying this administration will not be. I'm deeply concerned about what will happen there. But what I want to say about what they're modeling for us, what Donald Trump models for us, and what Elon Musk model for us, what JD Vance, what they model for us is that they are being fully who they are. Now, arguably, I would say that they're just being who they are. They're displaying their shadow, they're displaying all of it. Now that is arguable. I certainly can't see certain elements of that, I'm sure, but they're being larger than life who they are. And I'm not saying that we should emulate in the narcissistic qualities that are present there, but I am suggesting that it's an invitation for each of us to become even more who we are, and particularly progressives, that it's so vital for us to become more outspoken and more clear on what our own values are. And when I say that, I mean, I'm also aware we're all the things. I have conservative values, I have progressive values. We are also trying to dissolve the binary when it comes to these things, because we all care about our kids. In any case, there's so much more to say. And I'm very aware that there's more dissolving that I have to do in terms of my stuck places of where I can't see what I want to be able to see. But I think the invitation really is that it's for us to become much more expressed in all of who we are, much more expressed in what we really love and care about. And maybe what I'll complete with, because I think this is speaking to the energetics of the Taurus full moon with Uranus, is that we each get to have our own prayer personally and within our own communities of care to say what we want the world to look like. And I think that that is going to be the biggest challenge and opportunity and invitation for all of us to move out of what I see as very frequently just reactivity, just react, 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 react. And we just let our energy be pulled away and leaked out by watching the news or anything. It's to limit that, radically limit that. So you know what's going on when it's important. Look at policy. Stop listening to so much of the secondhand, third-hand information. Look at the actual transcripts. Look at the actual policies. Look at what's actually happening. And I would say also in our prayers that we pray for all of it. We pray for all of them. We send love and prayers to all of them. That's my sense. That it serve the greater good. But I would also say that, and I do think we pray for our country. You know, I do think we do. I say that. I think that because I want this land, I want these people to be cared for. Beyond that, it feels like we also get to really, okay, the practice, sorry. We get to practice pulling our attention from the outer dance, the outer drama, into again and again and again in our own personal lives. Like, what's the most beautiful life I want to live in a day-to-day level? And really go back to that. We have to include ourselves in the prayer. And then what is the most beautiful world that I want to live in? That I want my children, my grandchildren, and my nieces and nephews and my greats, future ancestors, what kind of world do we want to live in? And really spend time on that, really deepen into that inquiry and see where we can bring that more alive every day, every moment. How can we really see the places where we're leaking our energy and really the word is galvanize. I've heard that from some wonderful queer friends, and I've heard that from others. There is a galvanizing we're wanting to do, like come really coherent and focused within ourselves into our potency. And so that we're really coming back again and we become that embodied prayer for the world we want to live in. And that we really see where it's coming alive and where it's flourishing and where it's emerging. And we really focus on those little emergent blossoms and little tendrils and little baby seeds and little baby plants. Let's look at where it's emerging already and just pour our love into that. Just pour our love and attention into that, into our own lives, our own relationships, our relationship with land, our communities, our local communities, our global community, our more than human community. What is it? What is our prayer? What's my prayer for the reality that I want to live in, that I want to flourish? I really do deeply believe that, there are a lot of perspectives in the spiritual community about, these arguments around, and I do absolutely feel like we are going through a massive awakening, without a doubt. I think we are, without a doubt, moving into a time of greater unity consciousness. And I think these are the symptoms of a living body of the human species and of the earth herself, of a cleansing and a purification and a healing process and a healing crisis. At the same time that I believe that, I think that there are some spiritual teachers who would say that, some people are going into 5D and some people are going to go to a different realm, whatever, all has to do with free will. I don't know about any of that. But what I do sense, feel, and know from my own lived experience has more to do with the concept of timelines, and that my sense is that by the depth of our prayer, by the deepening of our courage to actually breathe into, step into, and continually return to that which we deeply love and want to grow and strengthen and bring more of into the world, that when we root ourselves there and we focus more and more and more of our attention in it, it's what's inside of us, it's what's in our relationships, it's what we see in the breathing lands, it's what we can imagine flourishing in the future. It's I have a dream of heaven on earth that is very unique to me. And I don't need to worry about harming anyone else by fully inhabiting that and living into that, breathing into that, and praying into that. I have a responsibility to be that prayer, to speak that prayer, to embody that prayer, to do everything I can to help bring that alive in the world around me. And if I'm in relationship with that permission and listening, with my own body and with the people who I'm closest to and the larger community and the land and all of that, if I'm doing that, then it's going to continue to be refined and honed. But it starts inside of me, in my own heart, because I have a responsibility to actually begin to clarify what I most deeply love and what I want to see in the world around me, what I want to bring alive. And then so there's this prayer that I have that no one else has. And it is my responsibility to tend to that, to guard it, to nourish it, and to bring it into the world more. And this is where the refinement of the South Node in Libra, of yes, learning to be in community, but also North Node in Aries, which is the directional flow, is sovereignty and I am. I have a life experience that needs to be honored and dignified and valued. I'm needing to stand in the sovereignty of who I am and be really true to that. And we're all being invited into that and not letting ourselves get pulled into reactivity in all these directions of what we think other people want and need. That comes, but it comes after we grew deeply into the presence of our own lived experience and dignify that. So I want to complete with that. This is a long one, I think longer than ever before, and just send so much love and blessings to everyone out there, for the journey that you're on, for the love that you are. I want to be really clear that in my circle and in my community, I do want to fully honor people who supported Trump, support Kamala, support Jill Stein, support whatever. I do. That is a value of mine. I want to have a circle where people feel welcomed. And I also have my perspectives and my worldview. And some people feel that astrology shouldn't. Well, I understand that. And I do try to be careful with that. But I think this is part of it. It's okay for us. I can think differently than you. You see things differently than I do, because we're all going to see things differently, because I've seen things you haven't and you've seen things I haven't. So I'm excited about what it can look like for us to actually have deeper conversations and learn to stand true in who we are and know that I can be me and you can be you, and we don't have to cancel each other out. We get to be fully who we are and complement each other and rub up against each other sometimes in ways that are uncomfortable. But if there's love there, if there's respect there, if there's dignity there, then what's possible between us? What gifts can flourish and blossom in the most unlikely places? That's what I am an advocate for. That's what I'm in for. So sending you so much love, and I hope you felt the medicine of the Taurus full moon. It's magnificent. It's very enlivening. We're going to feel this energy for a while, and it is an invitation to wake up to this deeper Uranus in Taurus gift and blessing that we have, that we're coming to completion of. So let's just really receive all the gifts of that and step into that awakening of this getting to live in this garden of earthly delights. And the heaven on earth is here. That's what I feel. That's what I live. That's what I breathe. And I remember again and again and again, and forget and remember. So offering that blessing to you as well. Love, love, love.